just so small rectangular objects. They're called books.
Welcome to episode 57 of Unlocking Great Books.
How are you, Sean?
I'm great, and it's good to be sitting here. I wore a very special T-shirt for our viewers out there. What is it, Carl?
It's the periodic table.
Okay, so
which is a great segue into what's the book we're doing?
The Radium Girls.
Right.
2016 book by Kate Moore, and
so this is going to be a great episode. We're going to talk a lot about where does history and storytelling overlap. And how do you tell a good story that's historically
and this
accurate?
is as you do point out, is a genre, isn't it? Like we're talking about historical, but we're not talking about historical fiction. We're talking about historical non-fiction.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's storytelling, and I think that's a really important.
And we're in good hands. I mean, the Kate Moore is really good. We're going to talk a lot about the sociology of work, particularly about how capitalism treats women. You're going to talk about the history of radiation.
Well, radium, that's right. We might talk half-lives.
Yeah, wow.
Hey, you can't talk radiation without half-lives. But, like an immensely powerful book that there's a lot of like moments of reflection, I think, and it's very hard to avoid them just because it's just so grave. But
we're going to talk a lot about, is it more important that you enjoy a book or the book moves you?
And I think we've given this a bit of a, like, I guess there's a little asterisk in it. People are going, oh my God, what are they going to talk about? Is this going to be pretty dire?
No.
Like, give this a listen. Don't give up on this.
It's not at all.
Yeah.
And look, the book's really about the Radium Girls. That's the title, the young women, about their search for justice. And I was reminded of that great quote from Martin Luther King, that the arc of the universe bends towards justice.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Absolutely love that.
And I forgot.
No, it says the arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice.
Yes.
The long part will really matter
that's exactly
for what's
right.
coming.
And one last factoid for today, it is World Whistleblowing Day, 23rd of June. Who knew?
That's brilliant.
But we were reminded.
Given this book's largely about whistleblowers and about how
it's very
whistleblowers
poignant,
are treated.
the day we're recording,
that
not
is
the day
perfect.
you listened,
Yeah.
like a good podcast. But happy World Whistleblowing Day, Carl. Let's get into the Radium Girls.
Cheers.
Books. I need my books.
So, Carl, they paid with their lives. Their final fight was for justice.
That's good.
This is one of those subtitles that leaves you under no illusion about what you're stepping into. But we always start with the author. So this is a 2016 book, and it has a very curious origin story, I found out, and I think you
absolutely
enlighten us on the...
Well, so both of us, when we read the book, I think we talked about how the story seemed really familiar to us. And it turns out that perhaps the reason for that is it's based on a 2015 play called These Shining Lives by Melissa Marnick.
So this is a London play.
Well, she's American. And it played in London in 2015, which is where Kate Moore must have seen it.
Earlier.
But I think it was 2008 in New York.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because Kate Moore's English, right? And this is such an American book.
Yeah.
That might explain it. Now, interestingly, the version I had a different subtitle to you.
Oh, okay.
So I have the 2017 version.
All right, okay.
And the subtitle of that is The Dark Story of America's Shining Women.
Okay. Oh, there you go. So there's the reference to the Shining piece again. And the play, and I guess the origin for the book was Kate's a British journalist or journalist background, from what I can tell. And actually, random fact on her, she was writing obituaries for the Daily Telegraph.
Well, actually, there's a collection of them you can buy.
Yes.
So, yes, she was a journalist, but she had left by the time she wrote this. She was the editor at Penguin or Random House.
That's right. Yeah.
But this is a great story. On July the 4th, 2014, she calls that her Independence Day.
Oh,
where she basically says, I'm going off to become a ghostwriter.
Right.
And by the time she made that announcement, she already had 4 books to write.
Wow.
Now check this out. This woman wrote 11 books between 2014 and 2017.
Holy
and
moly.
these Radium Girls was just one of those books.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
So she's prolific.
Yeah. And so New York Times bestseller.
Yeah.
I think it won a Goodreads.
But it's really important to say that, like Kate went to tell the story that she felt hadn't been told. Yes. And that was really interesting that there was a play written about it, but never a more comprehensive description of what really went on. So off she went doing her research and all that kind of stuff.
Totally, right?
Yeah.
And you think about it, the audience that watches plays and reads books overlaps, but one's much smaller than the other.
Yes. Yeah. And the opportunity to go deeper here, obviously in a book, so in the research. So where do we start?
Well, look,
we need to start with the origins.
Well, no, first of all, you've made the point already. This is a true story. So that's the first thing. But it's a horrific true story. It's just horrific.
And it doesn't stop, does it? Like the book just keeps on giving in terms of that, doesn't it? In terms of true story, you're like, whoa. So,
So look, the Radium Girls.
Yes.
Let's just start at the highest level. So these are female factory workers in this book in factories owned by the United States Radium Company.
So we're talking 1910s, 1920s US.
Yep.
So we've got two companies.
Yep. And the reason that radium matters is that's what we used to use to make watch dials and aeroplane instruments glow in the dark.
Yeah.
And these are the women that painted it.
Yeah, that's right. So radium's an ingredient that they combined with other things. Yeah. So I'm wearing my periodic table shirt.
I know. I love it. Right?
So they found obviously that you can excite fluorescent chemicals radioluminescence. So radium's the bit that makes the luminescence with the other chemicals. Yeah. And little side dash into radium. So radium has a half-life, so the radioactive decay of 1,600 years. So it's a really, really incredibly toxic.
And half-life is such, I know you know this, but half-life is such a strange concept because what that means is in 1,600 years, it'll be half as potent.
That's right.
So in another 1,600 years, it'll be half as potent.
Yes.
Again, so it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's insane to get your head around. But, it's only discovered in 1898.
Yes, exactly. And we'll come back to the story. Marie Curie may have died of radium poisoning.
Yes, well, they think she did. Yeah.
So the point is, at least in the early days, people thought radium was actually good for you. Like they used to put it in toothpaste. And the girls in the story, the women, they're not girls for God's sake. They're women. And the women in the story, they would paint their nails with it.
Oh, this was insane.
Yeah, they do all this cool stuff because they were told it was safe.
Yeah, and this was at a time where that was seen as a health thing, like a curative.
They were putting it in food, putting it in face cream.
Yeah, but when I think the timeline's really interesting because radium discovered in 1898.
Yep.
This story's set in 1910s to 1920s.
Yes.
Marie Curie died in 1934.
Yeah.
So we're talking about something that was found.
But this story drags on way past the 30s.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
But in terms of it's it's hard to get your head around that. Such a recent discovery and look at this, it glows in the dark and all. And then it's in full use. Yep. And then you got, of course, World War I.
But the same with X-rays, though.
Yeah.
We discovered X-rays. It was a party trick.
Yes.
It's only later did we think this might not be the good idea. Radium used to be called, in the early days, liquid sunshine.
Yes.
I love that line.
And it's a million times more radioactive than uranium. So everyone thinks, uranium, atomic bombs. And then this is a million times more radioactive.
So, just to make the link to the story so we can jump in. So these women are painting numbers and lines on instruments and watches. They were told to lick the paintbrushes to bring it into a point so they could be really accurate, have fine lines. Every time they lick the brush, they're taking radium into their body.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, they're poisoning themselves.
Yeah, they there was a quote in the book. They slapped radium around like cake frosting.
Yeah, and
so this is how and it used to become in a powder. Yeah. They mixed it up. And they had leftovers.
The saying was lip dip paint.
Yes,
lip dip paint.
Oh God. So So the era itself, isn't it? So we're talking about again, this is World War One.
Yeah. And beyond.
And beyond. But, obviously accelerated in World War One, the need for dials and switches and aircraft, the use cases and the watches and all that kind of stuff. And so again, like a...
But the point of but that's all true, right? But the bit that we have to put alongside this is, so the women in the factories are being told that radium is harmless.
Yes.
But the chemists in the same factory who are when they handle it, they were in the most protective gear imaginable.
But they didn't know that, did they? So
no, the women didn't know that. But the company knew that.
Yeah.
So this is about how duplicitous a company can be.
Yes.
It's about how women were valued and treated by capitalism.
And then to give the timeline again, they knew radium was harmful from 1901. So this is like decades, and you've got a population of workers who don't.
Yep.
They're not chemists.
Yep.
So they're relying on the company. And then
in fact, the only thing they have to go on is the fact they start getting sick in droves. And the company, of course, denies that their illness, their horrific illnesses in some cases.
Yeah, and I think, the issue with that is the way the illnesses presented themselves and the way they were kind of, first of all, there was that massive denial, but then there was also no one starting to join the dots where they, there's multiple conditions that look similar, but because this was happening, and that is interesting, you mentioned Radium Corp. So Radium Corp was in New Jersey, and then there was another company going on doing the same thing at the same time in Ottawa, Illinois.
Right.
And so these two sites had the same issues going on at the same time, but there was never any real connection between until people started to join the dots.
So the book really is about how the Radium Girls, and that's what's in the title, so I'll use that expression, it's how these women essentially battle for get justice. And the story's full of crooked doctors and duplicitous capitalists, and lying lawyers. It's a you're laughing, but it's
it's just I'm laughing because it's just so like when you're in the book, it's such a powerful. And you just at every turn you're like, oh no.
And you think the pathologist, what's his name, Hamilton Maitland, is actually going to be the hero.
But so just in like a book full of twists and graphic and the characters and all that kind of stuff is just something to behold, really.
And look, and because Kate Moore is such a great storyteller, you very quickly start siding with these women, right?
100%.
You're like, he's the underdog, please God.
And
let there be a good outcome for him.
And in some way you're being introduced to characters and the time and you're putting, like, you almost feel like you're turning up at work, don't you? Like, with these ladies, and you go, and then the stuff starts to happen, and you're like, oh no, not her, not her. She's such a wonderful.
No, they're all going to die. Actually, they all die in the end.
Wow.
So we made the point that Moore clearly was motivated by seeing the play, but then she goes right back to original documents.
Yes.
Breaks open diaries, sees archival records, reads medical records.
Into the towns themselves and the stories and people who knew the people as well. And it's like, wow.
So Kate said in an interview that it ends up being a very different book to what she first expected. It was a different book to what I expected when I picked it up.
So when you go into, I had heard of this book and you kind of get the feeling you're in for a bit of a rough ride. How would you describe it must be a fascinating process as an author to go, I don't know what I'm going to find here. So she was working on the instinct that there was an untold story here. So, and obviously very prolific writer. So this one probably was the one that, just gave. It's
a category of book, though, isn't it? Like, it's an important piece of history that gets told in a narrative way. Not as historical fiction, which some authors do.
Yes, where you
to create a fictional story to capture the history. These are the real characters. And she brings them to life. So, it's important history, but it's a great story.
And I think one of the key, that's not an easy way to write in terms of just capturing the era, the what's going on, because the underlying social kind of construct, as we've discussed with other books, is really important to get your head around, isn't it? Because
I want to make the point, I think this is really good sociology, but Kate's clearly a pro. She wrote 11 books in 3 years.
And works for a publisher.
And used to work for a publisher. So she's clearly very good at it. Interestingly, they asked her in an interview, could you describe the book? And I think, so this is Kate's summary, right?
All right.
And she says, and they asked her to do this, so this isn't her big noting, but she says, this is an amazing story of women who stood up and fought for justice. It's part scientific mystery. It's a part horror story. It's part courtroom drama. This is a piece of history that will break your heart, but somehow lift your spirit.
Yeah.
That's a perfect summary.
That's probably...
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks. Yeah, you couldn't have written it better yourself.
Who needs ChatGPT when you've got Kate?
I know. Wow.
So, look, I mean, I'm a little bit squeamish. I don't know if you're a little bit squeamish.
Oh.
Fozzie jaw.
Oh.
You know, when they...
just the... It's just... I mean, it's... squeamish and kind of lost for words. I can't describe the pain that you kind of live through in this, but it's important.
Yeah.
And I think that's do like the other thing that like just reading a bit more and reminding myself about radium and all of this kind of stuff. Did you know that they were still cleaning up the sites in 2015?
Yeah.
So
it's a super fun site. Yeah. I mean, that is the bit about the book that's actually genuinely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Sociologically, is you want the book to be a really nice narrative, but these women didn't get any justice in their lifetime.
No, not at all.
And like it took years.
Not even close to them.
Exactly.
Like just to give, so, I guess the court cases are starting to come to a resolution, and the timeline is quite interesting actually. So the lawsuit's mid-20s, and then from radium was basically used from 1925 onward with no injuries from its use. So this was, like a period of time, and the consequences were dire. And then from then on, there was adjustments obviously made, and the practice was tidied up. But in the 60s, it was discontinued. And then they're spending damn near $150 million US dollars cleaning up the mess. Well, another 50, 60 years later.
The compensation these women get turned out to be like a small cash settlement and then a stipend for every year of life.
Yeah.
And like they're all dead a year later. Yes. So it cost them nothing.
Yeah.
Do you know that watch dials were painted with radium until 1978? Yeah. It's crazy. And of course, because you're wearing the T-shirt, quick, without looking, what's the atomic number?
Oh, it's, I think it's about 90.
88.
88. Yeah. All right, yeah. So I was close.
I can see it, you can't.
Yeah. Thanks for reading my T-shirt.
So this is an amazing book. It's an amazing book, but it just raises so many questions about how do we end up with a world like this? Like the point being, if you think about it as being a story about how evil is the North American Radium Corporation.
Well, yeah, or corporates who,
that's my point, right? Like if you take it away from the specific and make it universal,
true.
What is it about? What is it about the way that capitalism works that can be so cavalier with the lives of women?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And, we are in danger of mansplaining this, but there is so much this book raises for me as a sociologist, because if you think about where's the universal healthcare, where's the adequate healthcare provided by the state?
Yeah.
Like, why is it the corporation's responsibility?
Yeah.
Where's the insurance?
And we do have to put this big asterisk that this is the US, which has a history of just baffling stuff. Yeah, no, 100%. 100%.
Well, that's really interesting because the US OSHA Act, which is also just getting dismantled, that wasn't signed into law until Nixon did it.
So Occupational Safety Health Act was in the 70s. Are you serious?
Yes. It was signed, it might have been 1970.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So there's so much about this book that just seems to talk about the sociology of work, right? So when I was thinking about this, I found a figure that said even in 1930, 50% of unmarried women in the United States were in work, but only 12% of married women were. So even in 1930, the idea was if you get married and you're a woman, you have to leave paid work.
Wow.
But I was thinking about, back to that idea about what is it about capitalism that's so cavalier, in this case,
to
with women's
end up
lives.
Like this.
Yeah. But because we covered the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire.
We mentioned that in
39, episode 39, didn't we? David Brooks.
Yes, David Brooks, yes. Yes.
But 123 women killed.
Yeah.
Remember and that one.
And they were throwing themselves out of buildings.
Well, they locked the fire doors because they were scared they were going to steal clothing.
Yeah.
And the building caught alight. And
and people were jumping to try and save themselves. Yeah.
Like, how it's just...
It's like how many times,
I think
it?
you said, right, occupational safety and health laws are written in blood. The reason we have those laws is because of things like this, things like the Radium Girls.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's terrifying. Look, so it's great history. What did you think about it as a book?
I thought I thought it was a really good book. I wrote twists.
Yep.
The way, I mean, you just mentioned the kind of sociological layer. It's very, very clear in the book because you get to know them. Yeah. They're not married women, generally speaking. You know, like this is wartime opportunity, big money. It was like a huge driver. It became a glamorous job because you got to go there and, you know, like, and then they had the party tricks of, you know, like
painting
the dust
the nails,
and all that kind of stuff. And so just
I agree,
for someone to be captured like that.
So
but
I agree with all of
characters,
that. I think it's
you know,
great
like
storytelling. We do end up loving the characters, and the amount of work she's done is amazing.
Yeah.
Structure of the book didn't really work for me, that knowledge, power, justice, tripartite structure. Lots of the really good details are in the epilogue.
Yeah.
That didn't work quite so well for me.
Yep.
But I enjoyed
overall,
the book.
like a great read.
Yeah, great read. I'm a little bit. The book, obviously. The movie's terrible.
Now, I'm glad I haven't seen it then. Yeah.
So the movie is terrible, which doesn't help because the book does such a better job of telling stories. So it was a low-budget movie. It was released in 2020. RogerEbert.com. Roger Ebert's been dead for a while, but his website's still going. Gave it 1.5 stars.
Oh, dear.
So given it's such an important story,
what
you think we could have done a better job of capturing it.
Yeah. That's crazy. That was it was a Tribeca festival film in 2018. So
was it really?
Okay. But that's not long after the book came out, is it? So but then you should be able to do something better with a story like this, I guess. Yeah, or is it one of those? I don't know. Is it a movie?
Yeah. Well, the thing about the movie, in some regard, the book, if you want to end the story, like you want to do the hero's journey, end the story with a redemption, you've got to travel very far forward because everybody dies.
Yes.
And then the law doesn't catch up for another 40 or 50 years.
Which is not like, I mean, it's not really a redemption story in that respect. It's like. Yeah, the book that...
Well, ask yourself a different question. Did the sacrifice of these women, I know they weren't willingly sacrificing their lives, but did what happened to them help move lawmakers to create safer work for women in America?
You just put a little bit on the end, which I was about to say. You would have to say there was some influence.
Yes.
But... was it for women in America? I don't know, because the fact that it took so long for stuff to play out. But then they did make change, obviously, because they kept using radium until the 60s and no one died from it. So they knew, and I think that's I was thinking about whistleblowing. So we mentioned the significance of the day in our intro, but I still don't 100% believe that, and they, and I saw this today on our website, protected disclosure, which is a very interesting way of, I mean, that's kind of talking about, there's two parts to that, isn't there? It's like the disclosure bit, but then the protection bit. I am still not 100% convinced that is a thing.
Right.
And when you keep hearing stories of whistleblowing, and I read another book recently where it took 12 years from when the guy blew the whistle to resolution, 12 years of hell in a very, very modern story, like we're talking 10 years ago type thing. Yeah. You're like, there's part of me that goes, first of all, hats off to anyone who calls it out and discloses something, but it would make you really, really think twice about the forces you're up against. And I think stories like this, as much as it's from so long ago and you hope that there's been some change, there's a part of me that goes, I mean, you see it in some of the tech stories and I worked at Facebook
it's a great point.
Happened,
it makes the book really timely to read it right now in 2025.
Yeah.
Because the whole the whole English-speaking world's having debate about, have we become too bureaucratic? Are there too many rules? And there might be, but that doesn't mean we want to do away with all of the rules.
No, that's right.
Because as we said, some of these
there
rules
was reasons.
Some of these rules have been written in blood.
Yeah.
There's a great line in the book. It says the industry got away with murder.
Yes,
and I think it's
that's 100%.
It's so important to remember.
And then another great one. Radium live with them, a marriage with no divorce. And it's like, it's just, so I don't know. I don't feel like, like in one sense, yes, we have learned. Yep. In the other sense, we haven't remembered maybe. And I don't know. And I just don't think that, I think if you were going down that whistleblowing thing, you would probably have every right to be a little bit concerned about how it's going to play out.
But if we go upstream, you talked about the precautionary principle.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And we've talked before about Chesterton's fence, about if you come across a fence in a forest and you don't know what it does, don't start pulling it down until you know damn well what it does, right?
It's like don't push the red button.
Yeah. But how do you, and again, this is another conversation for another day, how do you offset innovation and entrepreurship and the ability to take
and this
risks.
is the line, isn't it? So and then you add capitalism on top of that. Like that there is a lot at stake here, potentially a lot of money. It's that whole. I mean, that is the crux of occupational health and safety, isn't it?
And it's the argument about sustainability. You privatize the rewards and you socialize the costs.
Yes,
we all pick up the costs.
Yeah, and where are those lines, isn't it? And that's, I think, like we're talking in this day and age, like we always talk about. I love the natural disaster thing, isn't it? Like we forget about the last natural disaster. Yeah. We remember the most recent one, but then we forget about the one before it, and then we start going, but that doesn't mean that's going to happen again, and then all of a sudden it gets refreshed again.
Go back to Morgan,
and it does feel like again.
Go back to Morgan Housel, right? The world breaks every 10 years.
Yeah, and this is one of those stories again where you feel like this is one of many.
So I love this. So it clearly stimulated in both of us.
Yeah.
A conversation which is much bigger than just about the North American Radium Corporation. Yes. That's great. And I think we're both saying we enjoyed is the wrong word, but we're glad we read the book.
Yeah, I think I feel like a lot more enlightened about history as well. I
feel a bit weird. A couple of white men talking about the experience of young women in America in the 10s and 30s and 60s.
That's the power of this book, though, isn't it?
Right.
So, we need these books, and again, amazing female author.
Yeah.
Telling a really important story, and the layers of the story. It's not just a dodgy company taking its workers for a ride. There's a lot more layers, as you've pointed out. The sociological.
Yeah. So where do we land? Don't for God's sake, don't watch the movie, but
don't lip point.
Yeah. settle in and read the book.
Yeah.
Don't watch the movie.
But also to acknowledge the people who are brave at speaking up at stuff. Yeah. Like I don't know. I kind of admire that in people now. Maybe that's made me a lot more aware that there's a really good reason for that too. So I don't know. Great book. Yeah,
I think so.
Made you, or a book that makes you think.
Yeah, book that makes
and very historically significant as well, I think. So
I just want to end on that point. You wouldn't say it's a book you enjoyed, but it's a book that's going to stay with you.
Yes.
And for me, often those books that move you are often more important than the ones that you...
I agree.
Right.
You will not forget this book.
Yeah. No, I won't.
You will be moved.
Right. Great stuff.
Okay.
Cheers.
Alrighty.